this when I walk into parties. Everybody stops talking. Well, generally, okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to this evening's executive meeting. And I think we're now streaming. Are we streaming live or is it recorded? Streaming live. And here we are. So item 1 is apologies, and I don't believe we have any. We've got a full house. Okay. Item 2 is to sign the minutes of the 6th of February. Are you all agreed that I sign those as a true record? Any declarations of interest is item 3. Please let us know. There is no part 2 items. There are no public questions. And so this takes us on to item 6, which is indeed the review of the corporate risk register. There's one recommendation that we proposal to cancel any necessary actions to help mitigate the risks where it is possible. Dave.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the quarterly update of the corporate risk register. The register has been updated by directors in consultation with their portfolio holders. I'm pleased to report there's nothing significant added to the risks, and therefore I'm happy to take any questions that you may have or any suggestions you may have to amend the risk register.
Thank you, Dave. Does any of the opposition councillors wish to make a contribution? Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a suggestion to David. We get this paper regularly on colour coding, etc., to follow it, and details of ameliorations in some cases in regard to the level of risk. I'm just wondering whether within the report in future, officers will consider making recommendations they'd like the executive to take, rather than us having to plough through quite extensive paperwork here to highlight the issues you believe we should be taking action upon.
Okay, thank you. We'll take that away. Councillor Moore.
Thank you. I had a similar sort of question. So obviously we'll look at this risk register in more detail at the Audit and Governance Committee later this week. But I'd be interested to hear from portfolio holders about what role they have in reviewing these risks before they are added to the risk register.
Okay, well, we won't be hearing from the portfolios on this. The recommendation here is to propose any necessary actions to help mitigate the risks where it is possible, and those portfolio holders have already had those discussions. I can rely on them. I know they've done that. So, nobody else? Okay, so I'm going to open it up to the floor. Does anybody else want to say anything? You read your meetings were okay. So we'll take that away, Councillor, but I'm not sure we're going to do that, to be quite honest. So we'll have a look at that because it's quite clear what the register is to deal with. I mean, yes. So that's it. So I'm going to move the recommendation. Can I have a seconder, please? All those in favour, please show.
Unanimous, Chair, that has been carried.
Thank you very much. And now, item 7, which is the Householder's Guide to Design of Extensions and Alterations to Supplementary Planning Document, SPD, adoption. And here are 2 recommendations. And I'm going to ask, is it Roger and Hayley to introduce the document, and I'll come back to the portfolio at the end. If you'd like to talk to the document, please.
So this is just an update of a well-used householder's guide to extension design SPD, first adopted in 2008. It was brought to an executive meeting earlier this year. The update's been needed to ensure the document aligns with updates to policy, so the MPPF, the council's own residential design guide, and changes to permitted development rights. So it was updated to reflect this. So the extension consultation was carried out for 12 weeks, including a change to the name. So it's now called the Householder's Guide Design of Extension and Alterations. And that was carried out between October and January alongside the Exeter local plan consultation. That aligned with the council's consultation charter. There were a relatively small number of responses, 24. 6 of these were from organisations such as the Environment Agency, and as a consequence, the main changes to the document were focused on areas around flood risk, provided additional advice on sustainable drainage, and some updates to design. So we'd now like to seek approval for these changes, with the hope that it's approved at full council next month. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Hayley. Leaders, anybody want to say anything? Councillor Moore.
Thank you very much, Leader. I did write to Councillor Morse beforehand, and Hayley kindly provided me with a reply, but I am quite concerned, so I'm going to raise this at this committee here. With the council's commitments to active travel, I'm very surprised that cycle stores in front gardens will continue to require planning permission. And in the next paragraph, it says the dropped curbs won't. So actually, they would be causing more destruction to a garden than putting a cycle store in front. There's also the point the government is consulting on permitted development rights. So we are in danger if we adopt this in this way of falling out of sync, where with government policy, should they decide to allow people to put cycle stores in their front gardens. So I think it's a bit, it's very regrettable if we are trying to encourage, as a council, active travel, and we make it so difficult for people to be able to store their bikes safely. I do welcome the sections on biodiversity and sustainable urban drainage, but I am really concerned that the policy makes no mention of the increasing trend to replace gardens with plastic grass or similar. I would think there should be explicit mention to prevent the replacement of gardens with plastic grass as part of the impermeable surfaces comment section. So I feel that we have real opportunity now to achieve council's corporate goals, which are commitments to active travel and acting on the biodiversity emergency. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other leader want to say? Councillor Mitchell.
Just a general point in regard to this. How easy is it for us to amend this document at a future date, or are we stuck with this for an X number of years and we can't because of a set process, or is it an amendable document as our local plan emerges and other changes come about?
An important question. Anybody else? Okay, thank you. So I'm going to open it up to members of the committee. Councillor Wood, I'll come to you at the end. Councillor Wood. Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Leader. Just echoing my colleagues' comments there, I think it's great that you've managed to squeeze this report in alongside working through the Exeter plan, because that's enough to deal with on its own. So really appreciate that you've taken the time to do this. Now, obviously, there's elements of this which are driven by national policy. So then, while there might be some what may appear to be illogical choices, some of those are. I mean, drop curb, for example, strikes me as one of those things where you have to kind of think slightly beyond the obvious. So a curb, for example, outside my house, I don't own that curb, so I have to talk to Devon County Council if I want to drop a curb. It's a whole different thing to something I might put in my garden. So just checking really how much of an influence national regulations have with much that's in this document. And I'm pleased to hear it went out to consultation. So we have had the kind of feedback from that. Was there anything in the feedback that kind of changed the way we were presented? Did we listen and respond? I think is what I'm asking. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other councillors? Okay, so I'm going to come to Councillor Morse, who's going to enlighten me all about plastic grass, drop curbs, and cycle parks.
I am the most exciting portfolio holder. First of all, I'd like to thank you for doing this work on top of the Exeter plan, but I'd also like to add to your thanks the Article 4, the Sill and Water Lane SPD, which were also written at the same time. I'm not entirely sure how both the policy and, in Hayley's case, the development management teams are managed to do everything we are, and that we actually see any planning applications actually making it to committee because they're so busy. So thank you very much for that. The issue with cycle parking is it's a national need because it's the front of a house, and when you want to build on the front of the house, you need planning permission for that. And you don't need planning permission for a drop curb. You need that for any kind of flat surface to the front of a house where water cannot drain away and it drains onto a road. That does need planning permission. So you would need planning permission for an impermeable surface. Does that make sense? It's not the drop curb that's the issue. It's the getting rid of the grass that's the issue. So we don't give permission for a drop curb. Devon County do. We don't have to give planning permission for that. It's not a planning permission thing. It needs permission to be dropped. And my final thing would be, I think personally, and I probably get a lot of hate for this, I think that artificial grass is not very pleasant, but that's a choice that other people can make. It is a permeable surface. It isn't waterproof. It doesn't all just sit on top. And again, within national planning regulations, you don't need planning permission for it, and we're not in a position to add it to our list. So those are the answers to your questions.
So thank you very much for that. I don't think there's anything else, Hayley. So if you've been gearing up all afternoon for this, not to worry too much. But thank you very much. Very important. So we've got two recommendations here, and I will come back to you, Councillor, about how this can be amended. I'm assuming it just comes back here, but we will find out quickly then.
You could do it as much as you want, but having mentioned all the things the rest of the team are doing, I think it's probably very reasonable to give them a little while before you ask them to write an SPD. But this one will be adopted. At the moment, it's being added to our current local plan, which is nearly out of date because the other one is coming forward. It will be then added to that. There's opportunities along that time, I imagine.
Yeah, we'll get 24 responses. Okay, so there's two recommendations here. I'm going to move them from the chair. Can I have a seconder, please? All those in favour? Thank you very much. We come on to item 8 now, which is the tree and woodland strategy. And here is one recommendation that we note the report, and we recommend that council approves the adoption of this strategy. So, Kat, if you can talk to the document, please.
Thank you, Chair. The draft strategy lays out the council's vision, which is to protect and enhance our trees, hedges and woodlands for the benefit of communities, wildlife and the future generations, with the sole aim of creating a more diverse and sustainable urban forest, giving the city greater resilience to climate change and future threats. The draft strategy was subject to public consultation, which did include an online survey. There were 330 responses in total, and overall the feedback was very positive, supporting the recommendations made in the report today. In fact, there were only 2 objectives that received more than 2 individual disagreements, specifically the objective to maintain a comprehensive tree inventory to help inform management decisions and to increase the city's canopy cover from 20.2% to 30%. These received 9 individual disagreements overall, but overwhelmingly 300 people agreed strongly with them nonetheless. At this point, having mentioned canopy targets, I will say there is a typo in the strategy document, for which I apologise. It does at one point refer to a 24% canopy cover. Actual baseline canopy is 20.2% citywide. The Exeter Urban Forest report explained that. This will be changed prior to moving forward if recommendations are carried. The council has already been delivering tree services and operations aligned with the strategy. This is because the strategy is fundamentally based on current tree and woodland best practice. And it is best practice that has informed the key themes in the document. The strategy does look to formalise what has become standard operating procedure, but it also provides a strategic vision for the development of Exeter's tree estate. In the appendices, members will see that there's a comprehensive summary action plan designed to deliver across key objectives. It outlines the work that the organisation is and will be undertaking moving forward. At this stage, we're not asking for any additional resources, as the existing resources are suitable and sufficient to deliver the action plan. However, a woodland management plan is required, and if this identifies further resource needs, those will be put forward at a later date. The council already operates a tree risk strategy and an ash dieback action plan, both of which are suitable and sufficient to allow the organisation to operate tree management on a risk and liability basis. However, the strategy is the next step in the development of the organisation's tree management, and it looks beyond risk. It will ensure that trees and woodlands are managed for the benefit of cities, visitors, residents and communities, and that we have a clear and strategic goal to align and communicate to partners and other stakeholders within the city and wider sub-region. It will also enable tree and woodlands to be managed and developed as sustainable assets to support local ecosystems and habitats. The strategy clearly meets organisational goals regarding carbon reductions, climate change, biodiversity and air quality, as well as enhancing the value of amenity and recreational spaces. And hopefully members will find sufficient detail in the report and strategy to support recommendations.
Right, thank you, Kat, for that. I've now got Councillor Ketchin wishes to speak under Standing Order 44. Welcome to the Executive, Councillor. This is an opportunity for you under to Standing Order 44 to influence our decision and to suggest whatever you want to suggest to change that decision, amend it or whatever, although you can't make an amendment, to say why we shouldn't perhaps adopt it, or indeed just to be supportive and say why we should. It's totally up to you, but you have to keep to the recommendation, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors, and particularly to Councillor Bob Ford, who gets a special mention today just for being wonderful. Is that what you like? All right. This is a great document. I mean, where we stand is we're looking, it's quite ambitious, and we're looking to move from 20 to 30% canopy cover. So just a few thoughts or that you may or may wish to adopt. First off, I think DCC need to be engaged in this. They are the major stakeholder for curbs and sites where a lot of the canopy cover is absent, and where issues that are already mentioned in documents such as roadside improvement of roadside air quality, the high visibility elements related to public enjoyment, the soft sort of nature corridors that we talk about, you know, we've been putting in these parks like North Shore that the council did. So I think there needs to be something in the document when it's mentioned amongst the stakeholders like the University of Exeter and the rest, that the DCC really need to be part of this vision and somehow to sign on to it. That's just one thing. Other sort of thought to put to you all is that the TPO enforcement order, it's strong in the strategy. It talks about sort of quite brisk enforcement of when trees are felled or badly managed. I would suggest, as is done in other councils locally, I think Bristol, North, Somerset, have a sort of a 3-2-1 replacement strategy. It's mentioned in this strategy for other kinds of trees in the estate, but not for TPO trees. And the idea is if a mature tree is felled, you're losing a lot of tree simply, and the strategy would be to replace it with three trees, as is mentioned in other woodlands, for instance. And I think that should sort of go with that's something to consider with the TPO element. Currently, we have a 1-for-1 sort of policy. Lastly, opportunistic planting. We have the new 10% biodiversity rule in the city. We've been the administration has been very much at the vanguard of pushing that. Sometimes 10% biodiversity doesn't mean very much. Currently we've got all of this development where there's not much pre-existing nature, and so 10% on not much to start with is not much end result. And I think I would encourage that this trees strategy is very much part of the planning strategy for areas where there is an absence of tree cover. And those areas are quite obvious when these planning issues come up. And then just lastly, about funding for new areas, and maybe just to sort of sources of capital. People love trees. Quite a lot of people. Some people don't, but quite a lot of people love trees, and they're forever asking when I knock on doors to have trees in the local community. And it may be worth. Doesn't have to be part of the tree strategy, but something to consider is to have a citizen-funded routes for local improvements, particularly with trees. It's about something like £800 to get a tree put in on a curbside currently, I believe. And that's the sort of thing that might sort of engage some areas of the community where there are low tree cover, particularly my ward in Newtown, which has low tree cover. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Very helpful. We'll come on to some of those points that you raised at the end. Okay. Other leaders. Councillor Moore. Now, just to say before you make a contribution, Councillor Moore, you've put a number of questions, which I've got the answers to, and we will give them to you. I'm not asking you to read them out tonight because I've looked at them hard. You've got your answers. You're entitled to questions and to have the answers, but I can't see how any of these points would change our recommendation or amend the recommendation at all. It is detailed about costing and finances within, which are important, and we will take them away. So that's what I'm going to do. Hang on a minute, wait till I finish. And so what I would like you to do in your contribution is to come up with some similar points. I mean, Councillor Ketchen has come up with some excellent ideas, which we're going to have to take away and think on how we can, because I quite like some of the ideas he suggested, and we'll have a look at that. That is really what we should be doing here. So if you can make your contribution as to the document now, please.
Thank you, Leader. I put in my questions under Standing Order 44, and I haven't yet received a reply, and so I'm not able to make a comment on the reply or what's been made because it is relevant to the recommendation.
Okay.
So that's rather unfortunate. I do wish to.
Okay, well, you'll have your replies.
But I don't have.
You'll have your replies. One moment. You'll have your replies. If you want to move any additional recommendations or changes, the full council meeting, you'll be able to do that at the full council meeting. That is where you get your opportunity as a member. This is an executive decision of which we are recommending that we approve the adoption going forward. And as we said, the executive head looked at these questions and we failed to see how any of these questions and all their answers would change any of that recommendation. It's interesting information to understand the budget for ash dieback and all that. It's very interesting, and there is the answers we've got for you, but it will not change. And I do not propose, I'm not going to allow discussion on something which is totally irrelevant to the recommendation. But of course, you can move whatever amendments you may choose to remove at the full council meeting to this report. So that is what I've decided to do. But if you would like to speak to the report,
Please, yes, I would like to do that.
please do.
I have put in a series of questions around the financial aspects of the decision, because the recommendation requires the adoption of the report, which is great, and it has an accompanying budget, which then indicates whether or not it can be funded. I'm pleased to hear that we think we have sufficient funds already. However, the questions I've asked are based upon this current year's funding and next year's agreed budget book. It is not clear from the information provided how much the council has in order to progress this tree strategy. So in order to make an informed decision, I would have hoped that the executive would like to know how those budgets are comprised, because the budget in the report is not clear.
We appreciate your concern and your advice to us, but as I have said, the executive has looked at the questions and looked at the answers, and we've concluded that this would not change our recommendation to the council. However, it may well be council may choose to do it. And so that is how we have to do it. We have to stick to the recommendations. Thank you. Right. Any other leader wish to say anything?
Could I just say thank you very much for the report. It's not often you get a report that makes for good reading. This one does. I very much hope that it, and I know that people in my ward love their trees very much indeed. I'm sure they do in others, and I look forward to seeing this progress.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else? Right, open to other members. Councillor Williams.
Sorry? Oh yeah, you come in.
I'll come in at the end.
I was working down the line. I'll work this way.
Councillor Parkhouse.
Thank you, Chair. And yeah, thank you to the officers for really hard work, really hefty report that, as others have said, really interesting to read all about what we're doing in the city to increase biodiversity, to increase our canopy cover, and especially great to hear that it's had such a wide consultation. And yeah, I think that just reflects how important trees are to residents and how important they are to, are not just the environmental benefits, but also to the social impacts and the well-being and economic benefits, especially the Treeconomics report that was saying, it's good, isn't it? It's clever, that how much money the trees create in terms of the economic impact of them was really amazing. And I was really impressed as well with the work that we've done on the Northbrook Arboretum and the tree planting that is going on there, that myself and Ruth went over to help with, and there's video evidence. And yeah, I just want to also highlight the fact that yeah, this is really great for our how we're going to address the ecological crisis in the city, which is something that is so important to residents. And one of the reasons a lot of people I know move to the area is because of our biodiversity and the ecology of the area. And this is just such an important thing to get right. And I think we are, and we're on our way, and we've got that higher canopy cover than the national average, 3% more than the national average for cities and towns. But also some wards like Pennsylvania ward, which is my own ward, has more than double the national average, which is just amazing. And personally really get a lot of value from those trees and from the environment, the natural environment that we live in. So I just really want to thank you for the hard work. And yeah, it is a really hefty document, but makes for great reading. And I think we're just really proud that we're on our way towards this really ambitious target of 30% canopy cover. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Morse.
Yeah, I'd like to echo all the things about the report. It's a great report. I really enjoyed reading it. I love it when we get to say sentences like that. I bet you no one enjoyed the homeowners design guide, but I did too. I wanted to thank you for that. I think it's a really great document. I think what's interesting is when I thought I'd look at the map of our coverage, I thought I'd look into Lake Whips and it would be crazy the amount of trees that are in it. Turns out we're not even the best area, because I look out my window, see trees all the time, because we've got a lot of undeveloped edges of the city and a lot of open spaces that have really loads of trees in. So you kind of then get a concept of how much tree coverage we do have, because I don't even live in the most covered area of the city. It's also been really interesting to have these conversations throughout the process, to understand what's going on. And I just wanted to give a bit of credit to our portfolio holder who deals with open spaces, which is and recycling, which is one of the most massive areas of the city to deal with. Like, planning's big, but it's very focused. There is a very broad area that she deals with. And I can't get over how good she is at knowing the ins and outs. And actually, if she brings a report to me, I completely believe what's in it has been tested and tried. So I just wanted to, for a change, thank the portfolio holder for some of the work they do for us, because the officers are amazing, but the portfolio holder on this is incredible.
Thank you. Councillor Wright, then Councillor Wright.
Sorry. Thank you. I was just saying to Councillor, that was really nice. And it was. To echo that about the work that goes on, I know how brilliant our tree people are. I always call them the tree people. It's because I can't say that. For years and years and years, they've been really brilliant with me as a ward councillor by letting me know what's going to happen in St Thomas Ward, because as all of our Exeter residents do, we all love our trees, but maybe particularly so in St Thomas, where we've got some quite old and significant trees as well as councillors. And just to say, they're really brilliant, and they absolutely love what they do. And so sometimes when you see a bit of a Devon Live thing coming up, oh, somebody's thinking councillor cut this tree in half. No, they know what they're doing, because 6 months later it's absolutely beautiful and blossoming. So I just wanted to say thank you very much to them. They really know what they're doing. They really love what they're doing, and this shines through in this very readable report. So thank you for that. Regarding the typo, I'm glad you mentioned it. I was going to actually pick it up, and it's on 2 pages, 123 and 132. But also want to pick up about the DCC aspect of it, because it does, as Councillor Kirching did say. And I'm thinking back to something that happened a few years ago, where one of our CCTV cameras was obscured by a tree, and requests had then been made to DCC to prune back that tree so that it wasn't in front of the camera. And it was a really long and drawn out process. So I would be all for trying to improve the collaboration with DCC on the trees that they own, to try and get a full sort of strategy of maintenance if possible. And just on that, to increase our canopy, which is already very good, up to 30%, absolutely brilliant, totally with that. But also, again, with DCC, we have to be mindful that the more trees we have, the more leaves we have in the autumn, and the more block those drains are going to get, unless, again, there is a strategy that goes alongside that to ensure that that doesn't happen every autumn. So that was it. But thank you, it was brilliant.
Councillor Fold.
Thank you, Chair. I must say, yes, I must say I was struck by Councillor Ketching's speech under Standing Order 44. Thank you, sir. I wanted to ask Kat, is there any viability in the idea of a 3-for-1 replacement scheme, or indeed a sponsor your own tree?
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pearce. I assume you finished, Councillor. Oh, yeah. Yeah, something going on there. Councillor Pearce.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I just got a couple of points and a question, really. Councillor Ketching, fantastic to see a non-member of the executive or non-group leader here to support a recommendation tonight. I've never seen that in 2 years on this executive, so it's really pleased to see you endorsing the strategy in the way that you have. And I've got a question, Kat. You said that there were some responses who were against increasing canopy from 20 to 30%. I just wondered if you could expand on that, and maybe if there was any reasoning why they thought that that would be something sensible that we should be pursuing to try and reduce the number of trees in the city or not, or if they had any alternatives for how we could continue to improve our biodiversity within the city. And just to go back to Councillor Ketchin's point again about sponsoring trees, we've got a wonderful community lottery here in the city. So if there was a group of like-minded people who wanted to come together and make a community group, they could subscribe to the community lottery and fundraise that way to go and purchase trees to go out into their local community that way. So I'd encourage anybody to do that.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else? Okay, Councillor Mitchell, Webb Williams, you want to come back in?
No, I think everybody said what I wanted to say, particularly about the great things about me as a portfolio holder. I have to say that this is something that Councillor Parkhouse and I did sort of fight over. But in fact, we are partners in crime, which is why I came in first, because I thought you were going to come in after me. So there you go. It's been a real honour and pleasure to have this tree strategy now come to exec. Some of you will be aware that Councillor Parkhouse and I joined one of the partners, Devon Wildlife Trust, in a planting session out at Northbrook Park. I left Councillor Parkhouse to do all the hard digging outside, just stood there looking lovely. So that is an example of partnership that's working, loads of volunteers, so it's fantastic. I am aware that trees, yes, they get a little bit of negative press. So, for example, our cleansing team, when they have to go up sweeping up the drop leaves from the deciduous trees in the autumn, that can be difficult. And I know some members of the public sometimes find that some of our trees too much shading, and again the leaf drop. So, yeah, but they're a fantastic resource. If I just read a couple of things from the reports, just another highlight of the positives. So Josie's already mentioned that the assessed value for the city is £1.32 billion. This is Tree Economics that came up with that figure. We've got the partnership working that's been listed. And the other good thing, the amazing thing that trees do is they improve air quality. So not only are they converting carbon dioxide into oxygen, but they're actually absorbing the harmful gases like nitrogen oxide gases and particulates. So really important. They can help with stormwater attenuation. We've got noise abatement, biodiversity we've had mentioned through a provision of wildlife habitat. They provide shade and shelter, mental health and well-being, because we all love to look at beautiful trees, and they soften the landscape. And economically, apparently, it increases property values. I didn't know that before. And we also have, they provide timber, biomass, and fruit and berries. And the orchard that is being planted in Northbrook Park is going to be a public orchard, and people can go and help themselves to the fruit once we've actually got some fruit growing. So it'll be, I'd say, wait another year or two for that. But absolutely fantastic. And so well done to Kat for persevering. It's a massive job, this, actually going through all the consultation and the responses. And yeah, I'd say congratulations on an absolutely top-class strategy. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Councillor Williams. Before I come to you, Kat, what you said about Northbrook Park, that was a good idea to keep it like that, wasn't it? Just thought I'd say that. Couple of things there, Kat, about Devon County Council engagement. I think that is quite appropriate and other stakeholders to look at. The TPO enforcement and the 321, or the planting 3 for 1. Is that practical? Can it be done? Is it blah blah whatever? And should it be done important? And also what Councillor Ketchin is talking about, the biodiversity 10% rule. I'm assuming that this document is also, although not a formal planning document, would be considered as part of the planning process to bring forward within all of that. I suppose would be part of the consideration. I don't know. That's where I would see that 10% coming in, because otherwise it would have no standing if nobody was looking at it. And the funding, I think we've addressed some of that, Councillor, hopefully. But those are good points, and I hope we dealt with it. So, Kat, if you can talk about engagement with Devon County Council and enforcement and the replacement of TPO trees.
Okay, so a very good point on the Devon County Council. Devon County are currently developing a Devon-wide tree strategy, of which we are a partner, and we have contributed financially towards the development, so we're engaging with them on that. So whilst I wouldn't expect them to appear as a stakeholder within our strategy, certainly as a stakeholder, we're contributing to theirs. So to keep that partnership arrangement working. In regards to TPO and planting numbers, we operate a 2-to-1 planting ratio rather than a 3-to-1 planting ratio. This is purely down to success levels and being able to bring specimens to maturity. We find that the more or you increase the ratio, so the higher you go, the more likely you are to end up with failures as a result of management and welfare. In regards to the 10%, we are a statutory consultee under planning. So as and when developments do come through, we are consulted on net gain. And we have also contributed towards the wider planning policy development. And in respect of the consultation and the individuals that were against canopy, they didn't elaborate, unfortunately. There were only 5 of them, and they just stated that they disagreed with the principle of canopy increases.
Okay, thank you. That's been useful. Thank you for those responses. And again, not that I want to get in between Councillor Ketchin and Councillor Fold. Thank you, Councillor Ketchin, for that, because you've sparked a couple of issues. And I hope you had the responses that helped you, because they were important to the document. But I understand what Kat has said. So we've got a couple of recommendations, or the recommendation there. I'm going to move them from the chair. Can I have a seconder, please? All those in favour? You're going to vote for it, Ruth? Thank you. Thank you very much. So that concludes this evening's meeting. Next meeting, Tuesday, the 9th of April. Thank you very much for attending. I know. That clock's slow.